And it looked like ESPN just told the shocking truth as to why Sandy Brondello was let go by the New York Liberty. Guys, for this one here.
And just when you thought the New York Liberty were sitting comfortably on top of the WNBA, ESPN comes crashing in with the shocking truth about why Sandy Brondello, their all-time winningest coach, the very woman who just delivered them a championship, was suddenly pushed out the door. This isn't just a minor shakeup, this is a bombshell that has fans completely stunned, social media exploding, and the entire league asking what in the world is really going on behind closed doors in New York. We're talking about a franchise that looked unstoppable, a coach who rebuilt the culture and brought them glory, now tossed aside as if none of it mattered. And according to ESPN's insiders, the reasons are messy, political, and way deeper than basketball. The kind of story that flips everything we thought we knew about the Liberty, about their front office, and maybe even about the future direction of the WNBA itself.
The New York Liberty have let go Sandy Brondello. Well, in their terms, they will not renew her contract. In our eyes, they parted ways. She was fired, essentially. But not as bad as being fired, I guess. But that's just how we talk out here. Nonetheless, I'm shocked. She's been a coach there for 4 seasons. You look at the past 3 seasons, she made it to the finals in her 2nd season. She won the finals in her 3rd season, and they lost in round 1 this year. Outside looking in, you look at this franchise and you see that's a successful franchise. New York is a powerhouse in the W right now. So what is the issue? What is the front office?
The headline drops and suddenly the WNBA world is spinning. ESPN confirms it. Sandy Brondello, the most successful coach in New York Liberty history, is out, gone, done, just 1 year after delivering a championship. And fans everywhere are left rubbing their eyes, asking if this is real life or some cruel typo. Because how do you take a coach who rebuilt your franchise from the ground up, who carried you through finals appearances and finally delivered the trophy that had always slipped through your fingers, and then say, thank you very much, but your time here is over? It makes no sense on the surface. But when you look closer, ESPN makes it clear this wasn't some random emotional reaction to losing in the first round. No, this was a decision that had been brewing behind the scenes for a long time. Insiders say the Liberty front office had already made up their minds. The championship last season only delayed the inevitable, which means this was always a championship or bust scenario. Win again immediately or prepare to pack your bags. And that, my friends, is the kind of ruthless standard that feels less like basketball and more like cold-blooded corporate power moves.
Winning the title, what exactly led to the parting of ways between the Liberty and Sandy Brondello here?
Well, Malika, I know you guys talk about this a lot in the NBA and in other sports, but it was really championship or bust for New York and for Sandy Brondello. And in fact, if they hadn't won the championship last year, we might have been having this conversation a year ago, which is maybe a little startling to fans outside, given how, excuse me for those noises, for how impactful she'd been for that franchise. But that is how bullish this organization is in New York, and how their ownership and management really are looking to just continue upon that success that they.
Now think about how insane that is. You bring in a coach who not only stabilized the locker room, but actually turned the Liberty into the most feared team in the league. She takes them to the finals in her 2nd year, wins it all in her 3rd, then comes back this season and still posts one of the best records in the W. Yet because the run ended earlier than expected, the front office immediately decides that isn't good enough. They don't want progress, they don't want consistency, they don't even want stability. They want absolute dominance every single year, no excuses. And if they don't see that perfection on paper, they simply throw the entire project away and start fresh. It's the classic Wall Street mentality, bleeding into sports, treating a championship coach like a stock that's lost a couple points and needs to be dumped immediately. And the craziest part is, Sandy Brondello wasn't even working with a fully healthy roster. The major injuries hit at the worst time. Depth was clearly an issue. Yet she still managed to coach this team into the playoffs with a top record. So to fire her under those circumstances doesn't just look harsh, it looks arrogant, and it sends a very clear message that no matter how much history you make in New York, the bar will always be set higher than humanly possible.
Down with ESPN to give us an update as to why Sandy Brondello will let go. And what's crazy about all of this in this interview that I'm about to show you guys is that Sandy Brondello was supposed to be fired last year, but she actually won the WNBA championship.
And here's where it gets even wilder, because ESPN didn't just say this was about wins and losses. They revealed that politics and power plays were lurking behind every decision. Think about it. Sandy Brondello wasn't only winning games, she was publicly acknowledging the new wave in the league, giving credit to players like Caitlin Clark, who have completely shifted the spotlight of the WNBA. And while fans loved the honesty, while it showed she had her finger on the pulse of where the league was heading, it didn't sit well with the Liberty's front office, who wanted their own stars like Breanna Stewart and Sabrina Ionescu to be the faces of not just New York, but maybe even the entire league. So when Brondello spoke openly about Caitlin's cultural impact, it rubbed certain powerful people the wrong way. Suddenly, it wasn't about basketball anymore. It was about brand control, about image, about who gets to carry the torch of the WNBA. And if a coach threatens that narrative by speaking too much truth, well, that coach quickly becomes expendable no matter how many wins she brings in, which makes this firing less about performance and more about egos at the top of the organization trying to dictate who controls the story.
New York Liberty just fired their head coach. People are confused as to why, because they won the championship last year, they made the playoffs this year. In sports, there's always a scapegoat when things aren't going the way that they wanted it to go. Clearly, in New York, the standard has been raised. As Coach Tibbs learned with the New York Knicks, making the playoffs does not guarantee that you are safe anymore. They have raised the standard. They're sending a message to the fans, to the team, saying, we don't want to just go to the playoffs. We need to go to the finals and we need to win. So if it's not the players on the court that are changing, it's got to be the coaching staff. So unfortunately, that did mean Coach Sandy.
And the real danger in all of this is what comes next. Because when you fire the coach who just delivered you a championship, you don't just shake up the coaching staff, you risk shaking the very foundation of your roster too. Breanna Stewart, the superstar who gave the Liberty instant credibility, only signed a one-year deal. And now, with this move, her future in New York is suddenly a massive question mark. Imagine the scenario. The Liberty push out the coach who helped lure Stewart to the team in the first place. And in the process, they alienate the very player who put them on the map. ESPN insiders have already floated the idea that Stewart could walk, and if she does, New York goes from powerhouse contender to overnight rebuild, and all of it self-inflicted. That's the gamble this front office is making, trading proven stability for the illusion of control. And to make matters worse, respected voices around the league are already calling the decision reckless. Becky Hammon herself has gone on record saying she didn't like the move. And when a coach with her reputation publicly questions your judgment, that's not just criticism, that's a shot across the bow. It tells the entire WNBA that the Liberty aren't playing smart basketball anymore, they're just playing with fire. And if you think the chaos stops there, think again, because now the conversation shifts to the ultimate question: who replaces Sandy Brondello? And according to ESPN, the Liberty are actually considering going outside the WNBA and targeting NBA assistants, which sounds bold on paper, but in reality is a massive gamble. Because handing over a veteran, championship-ready roster to someone who has never managed a WNBA locker room is like tossing the keys of a Formula One car to someone who's only ever driven bumper cars. It's reckless, it's risky, and it screams desperation more than vision. Meanwhile, Sandy herself won't be out of work for long. Seattle has an opening, expansion teams are circling, and every other franchise in the league knows she's championship material. So, in trying to send a message, the Liberty might have just gifted one of their biggest rivals, a proven winner. And if Brondello ends up turning another team into a title contender, the revenge storyline writes itself, and New York will look not just short-sighted, but downright foolish for letting her slip away. Now let's rewind and look at the cold, hard numbers, because ESPN laid it out plain as day. In 2022, the Liberty were 16-20, clearly a rebuild year. Then, in 2023, they exploded to 32-8 and stormed all the way to the finals. In 2024, they went 32-8 again and actually won the championship. And in 2025, they finished 27-7, but got bounced early in the playoffs because of injuries. That resume alone should guarantee a coach not just job security, but a multi-year extension and a celebration tour. Yet somehow in New York, it gets you fired. Coaches in other franchises with half those results are treated like legends. Some even get statues built outside arenas. But in Liberty Land, it apparently earns you a cold statement and a pink slip. And that's why fans are absolutely furious right now, because this decision doesn't line up with basketball logic. It only makes sense if the front office cares more about optics, headlines, and flashy branding than actual wins. They want to be the glamour franchise that flexes money and resources, but in chasing that image, they've thrown away the one thing every great team needs: stability. And that's a self-inflicted wound that could haunt them for years. And the ripple effects are already being felt inside the locker room. Because when players watch the very coach who delivered them, history get tossed aside like yesterday's news, it destroys trust. It sends a brutal message that hard work and loyalty don't matter, that even winning it all isn't enough to protect you from the axe. And athletes know when management is playing politics instead of basketball. They're professionals, they feel it immediately, and it makes it harder to buy into the system, harder to believe the next coach will be treated any differently. And while all of that is brewing inside the team, the fans are erupting on the outside. Social media has been on fire since the announcement, with Liberty supporters calling it betrayal, nonsense, even sabotage. Some are saying they won't support the team until ownership changes, and that's when you know a move has backfired. When, instead of rallying your base, you push them away. New York thought they were making a bold statement, but what they really did was alienate the very people who pack the arena, who buy the jerseys, and who carried the hype that made the Liberty look bigger than life. And once you lose that trust, it's almost impossible to get it back. And here's the kicker. This entire situation isn't just about Sandy Brondello. It's a mirror reflecting the WNBA's biggest problem. Instead of building on stability and celebrating real growth, the league too often chases drama. Instead of letting stars coexist and thrive, it forces rivalries. Instead of planning long-term, it gambles on quick, flashy fixes that almost always backfire. And the Liberty, who should be the model franchise, just became the prime example of self-sabotage. Because make no mistake, Sandy Brondello didn't fail. She was sacrificed at the altar of ego and control. She proved her value with wins, with leadership, with a championship banner that will hang forever, and still she was tossed aside as if none of it mattered. And now New York is left more fragile and more unstable than at any point in the last 5 years. If Breanna Stewart walks, if fans pull their support, if Sandy lands with Seattle or an expansion team and wins again, this decision will go down as one of the biggest blunders in WNBA history. So where does that leave us? With a league that just watched its so-called powerhouse implode over politics, with a coach who deserved better already, being courted elsewhere, and with millions of fans wondering if the Liberty just torched their own future for the sake of appearances, ESPN's bombshell exposed the truth. Sandy wasn't fired because she failed. She was fired because perfection was demanded and anything less was punished. And in chasing that impossible standard, the Liberty may have just lost everything that made them great. Now the question is simple. Will they recover from this, or did they just change the WNBA's balance of power forever? Let me know what you think in the comments. Smash that like button. If you agree this was pure madness, and of course, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next breakdown. Because trust me, the fallout from this one is only just beginning.